Captain Leo's heart raced as his spacecraft plunged into the alien atmosphere. The ship's system screamed in protest, and alarms blared in his ears. With a quick flick of his wrist, he wrestled the controls to stabilize the ship, but it was too late. The craft shuddered violently, and before he could react, the ship's hull scraped across the jagged landscape of the unknown world. The ship was coming down fast, crashing toward a flat, rocky plain. A jagged mountain range loomed in the distance, but the ground below was rough and uneven. Leo fought to control the descent. His hands were slick with sweat as he focused all his energy on keeping the ship intact. With one final pull of the lever, the ship hit the ground with a bone-jarring thud. The whole vessel rattled, and everything went dark. For a long moment, Leo was disoriented. His head spun, and his body felt heavy. Slowly, he lifted himself up from the chair. His seatbelt had saved him from a serious injury, but his body ached, and the cabin smelled of burnt wiring and smoke. He wiped the blood from his forehead and groaned as he unbuckled himself. He glanced at the damaged console and tried to assess the situation. The ship was in bad shape. The planet outside his window was unlike anything Leo had ever seen. The sky was a mix of deep purples and fiery oranges, with two suns slowly setting in the distance. The air was thick with the scent of strange flowers, and there was an eerie silence that hung in the air. No sound of animals or wind, just a quiet stillness. The crash had rendered his ship nearly useless. Communications were down, and the navigation system was completely fried. He had no choice but to leave the ship and find help. His mission had gone wrong, way wrong, but he wasn't about to give up. Survival was his job. He grabbed his emergency kit, slung it over his shoulder, and stepped into the unknown. The planet was vast and foreign, a place far beyond the reaches of human exploration. Leo had no idea where to go, but the first step was always to survive. He looked around, trying to get his bearings, and that's when he saw her. At first he thought she was an illusion, a figure standing in the distance, partially hidden by the shadows of the strange trees. But as he took a step closer, his eyes widened in disbelief. She wasn't a figment of his imagination. She was real. The alien girl stood with her back to him, her skin a soft shade of pale lavender that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the fading suns. Her long hair flowed in a cascade of silver waves down her back. She wore a flowing tunic made of a material he'd never seen before. Smooth, glistening, almost like liquid. She was tall, even taller than him, with graceful, elegant movements. As she turned to face him, Leo froze. He didn't know what to expect, but he certainly hadn't imagined this. The girl's large eyes, wide, luminous, and silver, locked onto his, filled with curiosity. Her expression was unreadable, as though she were studying him as much as he was studying her. She tilted her head slightly as if assessing his every move. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt strange and thick, as if the entire planet held its breath. Leo knew he had to say something, but he was still processing. Everything, the crash, the strange world, and now this unexpected encounter. "Hello?" Leo said, his voice sounding too loud in the quiet atmosphere. "Can you understand me?" The girl didn't respond at first. She stepped forward, her long legs moving gracefully, as though she was gliding across the ground. She stopped a few feet from Leo, her eyes never leaving his. Then, as if deciding to answer, she spoke in a language he didn't understand. The words were soft, melodic, and yet foreign to him. Leo tried to focus, but the alien sounds were impossible to grasp. He was trained in basic communication techniques for such encounters, but this language was unlike anything he'd learned. Frustration bubbled up in him, but he pushed it aside. This was a first contact situation, and panic wouldn't help him. He raised his hands slowly in a gesture of peace. "I'm human. I come in peace," he said, hoping she would understand the meaning. He kept his tone calm and friendly, trying to show her that he wasn't a threat. The girl tilted her head again as if intrigued. She reached out with one long, delicate finger and gently touched the surface of Leo's chest, just above his heart. Her touch was warm and her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she examined him closely. Leo stood still, not sure what to make of the contact. His heart raced and a strange sensation washed over him. There was something about her presence, something otherworldly and mesmerizing. She took a step back and studied him, her face unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. She seemed to be considering him, as if deciding whether to trust him. After a few tense moments, the girl spoke again, but this time the words were slower, more deliberate. Leo still couldn't understand, but her tone was softer, less harsh than before. It was clear she wasn't hostile. Leo was still on edge, but the calm in her voice eased some of his tension. He took a deep breath, trying to think of a way to bridge the gap between them. He had no idea what to do next. This was uncharted territory for him. "I need help," Leo said softly, feeling a surge of desperation. "My ship is damaged. I'm stranded here. Can you help me?" The girl's eyes softened. She took another step forward and placed her hand on Leo's shoulder, her touch gentle yet firm. There was a kindness in her gesture, and Leo realized that for whatever reason this alien girl wasn't afraid of him. She wasn't hostile, she was simply curious. As she continued to observe him, Leo's mind raced with possibilities. What kind of help could she offer? What kind of world was this? What was her species like? There was so much Leo didn't know, and the only way to find out was to take the next step. He offered a hesitant smile. "I'm Captain Leo. What's your name?" The girl blinked, clearly uncertain of how to answer. But then she took a deep breath as though gathering her thoughts. Finally, she spoke again, but this time her voice was different. The sounds were still foreign, but her tone held a note of kindness. "I am Lyra," she said softly, almost as if testing the word. Her voice was like music to his ears. Leo's heart skipped a beat. Lyra. A name. A person. This wasn't some creature out of a nightmare. She was real, and as strange as it all seemed, he felt a spark of hope. "Lyra," Leo repeated, smiling warmly at her. "It's nice to meet you." And so, in the quiet stillness of that alien world, an unlikely friendship began. They stood there together, the human and the alien, each trying to make sense of the strange path that lay ahead. Captain Leo followed Lyra through the alien landscape, the two of them walking side by side. The air felt cool against his skin, and though he had no idea what time it was, the fading suns cast a soft, golden light across the strange world. The ground beneath his boots was soft, almost like moss, but with a faint glow to it, making the path ahead seem otherworldly. As they walked, Leo couldn't help but glance around. The alien world was beautiful in its own way, but it was also unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering, spindly trees reached up to the sky, their branches swaying in the gentle breeze. Flowers with petals that shimmered in shades of blue and purple dotted the ground, adding a surreal touch to the already strange world. Lyra moved with an effortless grace, her long silver hair catching the light with every step. She seemed to glide, as though the world around her was bending to her will. Her eyes, large and glowing like polished silver, were focused on Leo as she led him through the alien wilderness. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, his voice breaking, the silence between them. He had been walking for what felt like hours, and while he appreciated Lyra's company, he still didn't understand what was happening. Was she taking him to some sort of settlement? Or was this just a walk to get to know each other? Lyra turned to him, her expression soft. "We are going to my home," she said, her voice still musical and calming, though Leo could hardly understand the exact words. "You will be safe there." Leo nodded, grateful but still uncertain. He couldn't help but wonder what safe meant in this world. The ship was a wreck, and he had no idea if he could ever get it running again. The communication system was down, and even if he could repair it, he had no way of knowing where Earth was in this galaxy. Everything seemed so far away. As they continued their walk, Leo felt a growing curiosity about Lyra and her world. She seemed so different from the humans he knew. Yet there was something familiar about her. There was a certain warmth in her eyes, a kindness that made Leo feel more at ease despite everything. "So, what's your world like?" Leo asked, after a while. "How do you live here? What do you do?" Lyra didn't answer right away, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she were choosing her words carefully. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but filled with a quiet certainty. "Here we live in peace," Lyra said. "Our people value knowledge, wisdom, and balance. We do not fight wars like your species. We believe in understanding one another, finding solutions without violence." Leo raised an eyebrow. That sounded almost too perfect, too peaceful. How could a civilization survive without conflict? It was hard for him to imagine, given the history of humanity. Wars had shaped Earth's past, and even now there were countless struggles for power and resources. How could a species like this one live without those things? "You don't fight?" Leo asked, trying to understand. "No," Lyra answered, simply her eyes meeting his. "We do not fight. We explore, we learn, we grow. Our strength lies in our minds, in our ability to understand and adapt." Leo thought about her words. It sounded almost like a utopia, a place where everyone got along and there was no violence. He wondered if that was even possible for humanity. Could humans live in a world without war, without conflict? Or was that just something that ran too deep in their nature? As they continued their walk, Leo found himself reflecting on the differences between their worlds. Lyra's people seemed to have mastered something that humans still struggled with. They had built a society that wasn't based on war or violence, a society where knowledge and understanding were the foundation. Leo wasn't sure if humanity could ever reach that point, but it was something to consider. "So what about your family?" Leo asked, trying to steer the conversation in a more personal direction. He was still trying to get to know Lyra, and this seemed like a good opportunity. "Do you have parents? Siblings?" Lyra seemed to pause for a moment as if the question caught her off guard. She tilted her head slightly, her silver hair shimmering as she moved. "I do," she said slowly. "My father is a high-ranking member of the council. He is respected by many and he works to ensure that our people stay on the path of peace. My mother, she was a healer, but she passed away many years ago." Leo could hear the sadness in her voice, even though she tried to keep her expression neutral. He didn't know what to say. He had lost people too, but hearing her talk about her mother made him realize how different their lives had been. Here, in this peaceful world, Lyra had grown up in a family that seemed to value wisdom and healing. Earth, on the other hand, was a place filled with war and strife. It made him wonder how things might have turned out differently for humanity, if they had the same opportunities for peace and understanding. "Is your father worried about me?" Leo asked. "I mean, I'm human. I'm not from here. I crashed on your planet and you've been helping me. I don't want to cause any problems." Lyra's eyes softened as she looked at him. "My father is wise," she said. "He will understand, but he may be cautious. He does not know if humans can be trusted yet. You are an unknown to us." Leo nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He understood the caution. After all, humanity had a history of violence, and it wasn't hard to see why an alien species might be wary. But he also knew that he wasn't like the others. He wasn't here to conquer or destroy. He just wanted to survive, to find a way back home. As they walked, the path grew wider, and the buildings of the alien settlement began to come into view. The structures were unlike anything Leo had ever seen, sleek, smooth, and almost organic in their design. They seemed to blend with the natural environment, growing out of the land rather than being built on top of it. The materials glistened in the light, and the whole place looked like something out of a dream. "This is my home," Lyra said, gesturing toward the settlement. "It is a place of learning and peace." Leo stared at the city in awe. It was beautiful, almost surreal, in its perfection. The buildings rose like crystal spires, their shapes both elegant and functional. The air felt clean and pure, and the entire city seemed to hum with a quiet energy, as if it were alive. Lyra smiled as she saw his reaction. "You will be safe here, Captain Leo." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Leo didn't fully understand. He had no idea what the future held on this strange planet, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer alone. And maybe, just maybe, he could learn something from these peaceful aliens, something that humanity could use to change its own path. As they entered the settlement, Leo felt a sense of hope for the first time since crashing on this alien world. Whatever came next, he was ready to face it. And maybe, together with Lyra, he could find a way to bring a little peace to his own home. Captain Leo followed Lyra through the peaceful streets of the alien settlement. The buildings here were stunning, smooth and shimmering with colors that seemed to change with every step. The air felt fresh and pure, unlike the polluted air he was used to back on Earth. He took a deep breath, savoring the clean, cool air. Lyra led him toward a large central plaza. The area was filled with towering trees, their branches stretching high above them, and the ground was covered in soft, glowing grass. In the center of the plaza stood a grand, circular structure made of translucent stone that seemed to glow from within. Leo's eyes widened as they approached. The building was both beautiful and intimidating, like a palace or a place of great importance. "This is the council hall," Lyra said softly, her voice carrying a sense of reverence. "It is where the leaders of our people meet, where decisions are made." Leo felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had already figured out that Lyra's people valued peace and wisdom above all else. But he didn't fully understand what role he would play in all of this. He wasn't a leader, and he certainly wasn't part of their peaceful way of life. All he wanted was to fix his ship and get back to Earth. But standing here with the alien city stretching out before him, he couldn't help but wonder if there was something more to this place than just survival. "Why are we here?" Leo asked, glancing at Lyra as they stopped in front of the entrance. Lyra turned to him with a serious expression. "The council wants to see you," she said quietly. "They have many questions about you, about humanity. They must decide whether you are a threat to our way of life or if you can be trusted." Leo felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't sure what to expect from the council, but the idea of being judged by an entire alien civilization was daunting. He had never been in a situation like this before, where every word he said could be weighed and measured by beings with a completely different worldview. As they entered the council hall, Leo was struck by how grand it was. The walls were made of smooth, glowing stone, and the ceiling stretched high above them, disappearing into the darkness. There was a sense of quiet power in the air, and Leo could feel the weight of history in the room. It was clear that this was no ordinary place. Lyra led him toward the center of the hall, where a large circular table was set up. At the table sat several figures, each of them tall and elegant, their features sharp and alien. They wore flowing robes made of the same shimmering material as Lyra's clothing. Their eyes were bright like polished gems, and their expressions were serious and unreadable. "Captain Leo," one of the figures spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "We have been waiting for you." Leo took a deep breath and stepped forward. He wasn't sure how to address them, so he simply nodded. "I'm here," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble. My ship crashed here and I just need help to get back home." The figure who had spoken nodded slowly, his eyes studying Leo. "We know of your crash, and we have seen the destruction your people have caused across the galaxy. We cannot simply trust you without understanding your intentions." Leo felt a pang of frustration. He knew his species had a dark history, filled with violence and conflict. But he wasn't like that. He wasn't a conqueror. He was just one man, stranded on a strange world with no way to return home. He had nothing to offer except his honesty. "I'm not here to cause harm," Leo said firmly. "I'm not like the people you've encountered. I'm just trying to survive. I just want to get back to Earth. I promise I won't do anything to harm your people." The council members exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. The silence stretched on, and Leo could feel the weight of their judgment on him. He tried to remain calm, but inside he was beginning to feel anxious. What if they didn't believe him? What if they saw him as just another threat? You must prove yourself, the figure at the head of the table finally said. We cannot simply take your word for it. If you wish to earn our trust, you must prove that you are capable of understanding our ways. You must show us that humanity is not as destructive as we fear. Leo swallowed hard. How do I prove that? He asked, his voice tight. The figure gestured to the center of the room. There is a challenge, a series of tests that will test your strength, your intelligence, and your ability to adapt. If you succeed, we will consider your request to leave this planet. Leo's heart pounded in his chest. He had never been in a situation like this before. Back on Earth, challenges were physical or mental, but this felt different. These were not humans he was dealing with. These were an entirely different species, with a completely different way of life. He didn't know what kind of tests they had in mind, but he was determined to prove himself. All right, Leo said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'll do it. I'll prove I'm not a threat to your people. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes filled with concern. Are you sure? She asked quietly. The tests are difficult, and not everyone who faces them succeeds. Leo turned to her, offering a reassuring smile. I don't have a choice, he said. I'll do whatever it takes to get home. I just need a chance. The council leader nodded. Very well, he said. The first test will begin immediately. Leo took a deep breath, bracing himself. He had no idea what he was about to face, but he knew one thing. He couldn't afford to fail. Not now. Not when his chance to return home was so close. As the council members stood, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier, filled with anticipation. Leo felt his nerves tighten, but he squared his shoulders and prepared for whatever lay ahead. The first test was about to begin, and he had no intention of backing down. The first test was unlike anything Captain Leo had ever experienced. The council had brought him to a large open space just beyond the council hall. The area was surrounded by towering alien trees that seemed to hum with energy. The ground beneath his boots was soft, almost sponge-like, and as he stepped forward, the entire area seemed to pulse with life. At the center of the space stood a large, smooth stone platform, illuminated by soft, glowing lights embedded in the ground. On the platform was a strange device, a kind of puzzle, Leo realized. It was a large circular structure with multiple spinning rings, each with glowing symbols etched into its surface. Some rings moved slowly, while others spun rapidly, in opposite directions. The symbols seemed to shift and change, and Leo's mind struggled to make sense of it all. This is your first test, one of the council members announced, his voice calm yet authoritative. You must solve the puzzle. Only then will you move on to the next challenge. The puzzle will test your intellect, adaptability, and your ability to think under pressure. You will have 10 minutes. Leo stared at the device. 10 minutes? He wasn't sure if he even understood how it worked. His heart raced as he stepped forward, taking a deep breath. He had to stay calm. He had to focus. He wasn't going to let this alien world defeat him. Remember? Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and encouraging. You can do this. It's not just about speed. It's about understanding. Leo nodded at her, appreciating the support. He wasn't entirely sure if he believed he could solve the puzzle, but he had to try. He had no other choice. He stepped closer to the puzzle and examined it carefully. The symbols on the rings were strange, nothing like any language he knew. They moved in patterns, aligning in ways that seemed completely random at first. But, as he focused, he noticed something, a subtle rhythm. The symbols on the rings seemed to have their own kind of logic, almost like a sequence. Leo's eyes darted from one ring to another, trying to track the motion of the symbols. His fingers hovered over the surface of the puzzle, but he hesitated. The rings spun rapidly, and he wasn't sure if touching them would mess everything up. But as the seconds ticked away, Leo realized he had to act. Time was running out. With a deep breath, he reached out and gently touched one of the rings. Immediately, the entire structure hummed softly, and the ring slowed down. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure how he did it, but the puzzle had responded to his touch. Encouraged, he reached out again, this time touching another ring. It too slowed, aligning with the first one. He worked quickly, his mind racing. The puzzle was still complex, but with every correct move, the rings seemed to move more fluidly. Leo could feel his confidence building as the puzzle began to take shape. It wasn't just about solving the puzzle, it was about understanding the system behind it. With each turn of the rings, he realized there was a pattern, a hidden structure beneath the surface. 5 minutes, the council member called out. Leo's hands flew over the rings, aligning them with precision. The symbols shifted, and with every click of the rings, the puzzle seemed to fall into place. He could feel the pressure mounting, but the rhythm of the puzzle was like a beat he could follow. The symbols finally aligned, and the entire structure hummed, the rings locking into place. Leo stepped back, his breath coming in short bursts. He had done it. He had solved the puzzle. The council members remained silent for a long moment. Then the leader of the council nodded, his face unreadable. "You have succeeded in the first test, Captain Leo, but this is only the beginning." Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He had passed the first challenge, but there were still more to go. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes bright with pride. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with quiet admiration. "I knew you could. You have a sharp mind." Leo smiled at her, feeling a rush of warmth. "Thanks, Lyra, but this was just the first step. I'm not done yet." Lyra nodded, her silver hair flowing around her shoulders. "You're stronger than you know, Captain." The next challenge came quickly. The council didn't give Leo much time to rest before they led him to another part of the settlement. This one a large open arena surrounded by seats where spectators had gathered. The sky above was starting to darken, the two suns now dipping below the horizon, casting a soft twilight glow over the scene. "This is your second test," one of the council members announced. "You will face a trial of physical strength and agility. You must demonstrate your ability to adapt to our world and its challenges. You will have to complete a series of physical tasks, each more difficult than the last." Leo's eyes flicked over the arena, his muscles tensing as he took in the obstacles ahead. There were towering structures to climb, platforms to jump between, and areas where he would have to navigate through a maze of narrow walls. It looked like an obstacle course, but one designed for creatures far more agile than a human. "You may begin," the council leader said, his voice sharp. Leo took a deep breath and stepped forward, his feet light on the ground. He had no idea how he was going to complete this challenge, but he couldn't back down now. He'd come this far. He had to keep going. The first obstacle was a set of narrow ledges that extended over a pit filled with thick, glowing mist. Leo eyed the ledges carefully, his mind working out the best way to cross. The ledges were barely wide enough for his feet, but he had no choice but to try. With a running start, Leo jumped onto the first ledge, his body almost slipping as he landed. His hands gripped the edges, and he carefully inched his way across, one cautious step at a time. His heart raced, but his focus was absolute. He couldn't afford to fail. He reached the other side and moved quickly to the next obstacle. Each task tested his strength, flexibility, and quick thinking. Some parts of the course required him to leap from one platform to another, while others involved crawling through tight spaces. His muscles burned, and sweat dripped down his forehead, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Leo reached the last part of the challenge, a large, towering wall. It was smooth and vertical with no visible handholds. His heart sank. How was he supposed to climb that? But then he remembered something Lyra had said. It's not just about strength. It's about understanding. He studied the wall for a moment, his mind racing. He could see the faint shimmer of energy in the air around the wall, something that hadn't been visible before. It wasn't just a physical barrier. It was a puzzle. Leo reached out, pressing his palms against the smooth surface. He felt a hum of energy run through him, and suddenly, the wall wasn't as smooth as it had seemed. There were faint, invisible handholds he could grasp. With a deep breath, he climbed. It was slow at first, but his confidence grew with every step. The top of the wall was within reach. He pulled himself up, his muscles aching, but his resolve stronger than ever. When Leo finally reached the top, the crowd of alien spectators erupted into applause. Lyra's face lit up with pride as she clapped, her eyes filled with admiration. Leo had passed the second test. He stood tall, breathing heavily, but his heart was light. One step at a time, he was proving himself. And, with Lyra by his side, he was starting to believe he might just belong in this peaceful world after all. The sun had set completely, and the alien sky above Leo was dotted with countless stars, each one twinkling like a distant jewel. He stood in the center of the large, circular arena, his body exhausted but his mind sharper than ever. He had passed 2 trials now, one of intellect, the other of strength, and though his muscles burned with fatigue, there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. Lyra stood nearby, her eyes shining with pride as she watched Leo. The crowd of alien spectators had dispersed, leaving only the quiet hum of the settlement around them. It was a peaceful moment, but Leo couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something bigger than the trials he had already faced. "I think you've earned a break," Lyra said, approaching him with a smile. "You've done well today." Leo nodded, still catching his breath. "Thanks, Lyra. But I have a feeling. The council isn't done with me yet." As if on cue, the soft sounds of footsteps approached from behind. Leo turned to see the council members walking toward him, their expressions serious and unreadable. The leader of the council, the tall figure with silver eyes, stepped forward. "You have proven yourself worthy in the trials, Captain Leo," the leader said in his deep, calm voice. "But there is one more thing you must face. A challenge that will test not just your physical strength but your heart." Leo felt a lump form in his throat. He had prepared himself for everything: puzzles, obstacles, tests of skill. But now the council was hinting at something deeper, something more personal. "What kind of challenge?" Leo asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty he felt inside. The leader's gaze softened as though he understood Leo's concerns. "It is not a test of intellect or physical ability, but a test of trust and compassion. You will face a decision that will affect not only your future, but the future of our people." Leo's brow furrowed. He hadn't expected this. What kind of decision could he possibly make that would influence an entire alien civilization? He had come here as a stranger, a crash survivor, and now he was being asked to make a choice that could change everything. Lyra stepped closer, her voice quiet, but filled with a hint of worry. "The council is asking you to make a choice, Leo," she said. "It's not just about what you want, but what is best for both your people and ours." Leo met her gaze. He could see the concern in her eyes, but there was something else too, something he hadn't quite understood until now. There was a bond between them, something that had grown over the days they had spent together. It wasn't just about survival anymore. He had begun to care for Lyra, and he knew she felt the same. But the choice before him was bigger than just the two of them. The council leader spoke again, his tone firm, but not unkind. "Our world is facing a crisis, a threat that we cannot ignore. It is a force that could destroy everything we have built. The question is whether you, Captain Leo, and your people, humans, will stand with us to face this threat, or if you will leave us to fight it alone." Leo's heart skipped a beat. He had been on this planet for a short time, and already, the weight of his presence felt heavier. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. His species, Earth, was now tied to the fate of this peaceful world. "What kind of threat?" Leo asked, his voice low and tense. He couldn't fully grasp what they were saying. Had he come to this alien world only to face another conflict? Another war? The leader's expression darkened. "There is a force beyond our borders, an ancient species, one that has encountered other peaceful civilizations before and destroyed them. They have learned of us, and they are coming." Leo's stomach turned. He had no idea what this species was, but the way the council spoke of them sent chills down his spine. It was a threat unlike anything Earth had faced, but now he was being asked to fight it. He wasn't sure if his people could help, but there was something inside him that told him he couldn't just walk away from this. The council leader's voice softened as he continued. We cannot face this alone, but we also cannot risk losing our world to them. You must decide. Will you stay and help us, or will you leave, knowing that our future is uncertain? Leo felt the weight of the decision bearing down on him. He had come here to survive, to return to Earth. But now, the stakes were so much higher. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the people he had come to know, the people who had shown him kindness and trust. And it was about Lyra, who stood beside him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. He turned to her, searching her face for any sign of what she might want. But her expression was the same as it had always been, calm, composed, yet filled with something deeper. There was a part of her that wanted him to stay, to fight alongside her people. But there was also a part of her that feared the consequences of this decision. Leo took a deep breath, his mind racing. His people had always fought for survival, for their own land and resources. They had faced wars and conflicts for as long as he could remember. But now he was being asked to fight for something different, for a peaceful world that didn't deserve to fall to destruction. I'm not a soldier, Leo said, his voice low. I'm just a man who wants to go home, but I can't leave this world to face whatever is coming alone. Lyra's eyes softened, her expression filled with gratitude. You don't have to be a soldier, she said softly. You just have to choose what's right. Leo's heart pounded in his chest. He looked back at the council, at the members who had watched him prove himself in the trials. He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing. He couldn't walk away from this, not now, not when there was still a chance to make a difference. I'll stay, Leo said, his voice steady and sure. I'll help. I'll fight with you. The council members exchanged glances, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, the leader nodded, his expression approving. You have made the right choice, Captain Leo, the leader said. Your people have shown us that you are capable of understanding our ways. Together we will face this threat. Together we will protect both our worlds. Lyra stepped forward, her smile bright and full of hope. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for choosing to stand with us. Leo nodded, his resolve firming. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was the right thing to do. For Lyra, for her people, and for humanity. As the stars above twinkled in the night sky, Leo knew that his journey had just taken a new turn. And no matter what happened next, he would face it with everything he had. The decision had been made. Captain Leo stood alongside Lyra at the heart of the alien city, his resolve solidified. The peaceful world, once so foreign and distant to him, was now his home for as long as he could help protect it. The threat was real, and it was closing in. Together with Lyra and the Council, Leo had chosen to stand with this alien civilization in their fight for survival. The days that followed were a blur of preparation. The Council had shared all they knew about the ancient species, an aggressive, war-hungry race that had long destroyed peaceful worlds. Their ships were enormous, and their technology was beyond anything Earth had encountered. Leo's heart had sunk when he saw the images of the alien ships, vast metallic behemoths that could crush entire planets with ease. Lyra had been by his side through it all, offering guidance and strength when he needed it most. Despite the growing tension, she remained a calm and steady presence in his life. He had come to rely on her more than he cared to admit, not just as an ally, but as someone who understood him in a way no one else could. Their bond had deepened with every passing day, and Leo knew there was something between them that was unspoken but undeniable. The alien army was preparing for battle, and Leo had been assigned to help train their forces. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew enough about tactics to contribute. The training grounds were vast, with alien warriors practicing their combat techniques, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization with the environment. Their technology allowed them to create energy shields and weapons that seemed to hum with an otherworldly power. Leo stood at the edge of the training field, watching as the alien soldiers practiced in formations, their movements fluid and precise. Lyra joined him, her silver hair flowing in the breeze. She smiled at him, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice soft. Leo turned to her, meeting her gaze. "It's not about being sure anymore. It's about doing what's right. I can't sit back and watch while this world is destroyed." Lyra nodded, her eyes full of understanding. "I know, but it's dangerous. You're not like them. You're human." Leo smiled at the word. "Yeah, I'm human, but that doesn't mean I'm any less capable of standing up for what's important. I'm not leaving until we've won." Lyra's eyes softened. She took a step closer to him, her hand brushing his arm. "I'm glad you're with us, Leo. You've proven so much already, and I know you'll keep proving that humanity has a place in this fight." Leo felt a rush of gratitude for her words. He had never expected to find someone like Lyra in a place like this, yet here they were, standing side by side in the face of an impossible challenge. He had come to care for her in ways that went beyond friendship, and the feeling was mutual. But now wasn't the time for distractions. The battle was approaching, and they needed to focus. The next few days were a blur of strategy meetings, drills, and intense preparation. The council had revealed the location of the enemy fleet, an ancient stronghold located on the edge of their star system. Leo, Lyra, and the council members worked together, mapping out the best course of action. It would take everything they had to stand a chance against the oncoming invaders. As the day of the battle drew near, the tension in the air was palpable. Leo had seen wars before, but this felt different. There was no hatred in his heart, only determination. He wasn't fighting for power or territory. He was fighting for survival, for the peaceful world that had welcomed him when he had nothing, for the people who had trusted him when they had no reason to. Lyra came to him one last time before the battle. She had a solemn look on her face. As she approached, her footsteps light on the soft ground. "Leo," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but I want you to know that no matter what, I'm glad you're here. You've changed everything for us." Leo reached out and gently took her hand in his. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. "We'll get through this together." Lyra squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unspoken emotion. "I believe that." The night before the battle, Leo couldn't sleep. He lay awake in the small quarters the council had provided him, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the settlement around him. The stars outside were like pinpricks of light in the vastness of space. Tomorrow would be the day that would decide the fate of this peaceful world, and perhaps his own fate as well. The next morning, Leo stood at the edge of the battlefield, his heart heavy but resolute. The alien soldiers were ready, their ranks lined up and prepared for what was to come. The air was thick with tension as the alien ships powered up for launch. It was a sight Leo would never forget. The calm before the storm, the moment when everything seemed to hang in the balance. Lyra stood beside him, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in the air. Leo nodded. "I've never been more ready." The enemy fleet was approaching, their massive ships appearing on the edge of the atmosphere like dark shadows. They moved in perfect unison, their engines glowing ominously as they descended toward the planet. Leo's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with determination. "No matter what happens, Leo, I'm glad we fought together." Leo smiled, feeling the weight of her words. He wasn't just fighting for himself or even for this world. He was fighting for something greater, something that transcended species or planets. He was fighting for the hope that one day, peace could be possible, even in the face of such overwhelming odds. The battle began with a roar, the sound of energy weapons clashing and ships colliding. Leo and Lyra fought side by side, using every bit of knowledge and skill they had to push back the enemy. It was chaos, but it was also beautiful in its own way. A fight for survival, a fight for something worth saving. As the day wore on, Leo found himself more and more connected to the people around him, alien and human alike. They fought not as strangers but as allies. Together, they would face the darkness and emerge victorious. By the end of the day, the enemy was defeated. The skies above the planet cleared, and the sounds of battle slowly faded. Leo stood with Lyra, watching as the stars began to shine once more. "We did it," Leo whispered, a smile tugging at his lips. Lyra nodded, her expression soft and full of relief. "We did it." As the sun began to rise over the peaceful world once more, Leo knew this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more struggles, but for the first time in a long while, he felt hopeful. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. And with Lyra by his side, he knew that together they could face anything the universe threw at them.